What's up, guys? Glad you could make it to tonight's live stream. We're not gonna get rolling just yet, but I figure we'll do a little bit before we get started. Oof. Figured. Where'd she go? Come here, you. Come on, you. I figured I'd let Blondie see her grand chicken. That's the little bitty chicken that was there a couple of weeks ago. She's getting real big. She's getting ready to go outside. So, as you can see, there's been some movement in the old office there. I've got another bearded dragon behind the thing there because she's a little bit bougie and she can't know that there's another bearded dragon in here. Beep beep. Yep, that's Manon. She's gotten pretty big now. She's getting ready to go outside. She's very sweet. Oh yeah, she's big. She's getting there. Let me see if I can catch one of the other little terrors on there. There you go. Gotcha. That's the littlest one we've got. Even she's getting pretty big. Oh. Whoop. There she goes. Alright, you guys. Settle down. Well, hopefully you guys are having a pretty good Saturday there. Hang on a second. Gotta put my wheel back on. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys have had a good holiday. I know, right? It's hard to believe they're not all that old at all. They've grown up pretty quick, but those little chicks do that. Let's see. Hopefully you guys had a good New Year's. You guys are having a good time. Um, let's see. There will definitely be a live stream next Saturday. Um, Pretty sure. Well, I've got to go. I start work on Friday, so I'm sure it'll take a couple of days for me to get my security clearance before I can go back to the compound. So I'll probably have Saturday and Sunday off, probably. If not, I'll let you guys know. But yep, I'm going back to work next week, so that's going to change our live schedule a little bit. Depending on my off days, we'll pick an off day and we'll see who we can get to come to live streams. It'll be about the same as we got going on now. I'll read a week's worth of stories and we'll get everything taken care of. That's about it, I guess. We've got a bunch of new stories tonight. We're going to continue on with our Black Site stuff. I've been working on some more Black Site stories. I figure we're in chapter 4 right now. I figure we'll finish out chapter 4 and then we'll when we pick up chapter 5, that's when we'll take a break and do another story for a little while. That way I can write a bunch of stories and get a little bit ahead there. Other uploads should proceed as regular. We should get our cozy horrors in the morning, our evening story, and then our bigger stories in the evening on the weekend. Probably going to start doing some guest stories again. Leia has been nice enough to send me a long story that I'll probably read, and I've had some other people offer. I'll probably start taking them up on it. It'll be nice to do guest stories again, and yeah. Some of you guys may notice I've got the mic moved back again. I don't know if it's a new cord or what, but I tried moving it, and it hasn't been scratchy in the least bit, so that's a good thing. I don't know. If you guys hear any scratchiness, you guys let me know so that I can stop and readjust there. Well, funny you should mention that, Blondie, because tonight's story is actually a Stragview story. Um, so yeah, there's that. We should be getting more Stragview stories. I've already got a hospital story written as well, so that'll be kind of cool. But yeah, should be a lot of fun. Oh, it's the reflection of the fan. I was like, it looks like there's a light flashing behind me. But yeah, should be a lot of fun. Like I said, you guys are going to be my barometer tonight. If you guys start hearing any crackling, let me know so that I can go back and re-record, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. That way I know. Damn, I forgot to get water. But let's get ready for some stories. Any day now, Duke Cannon. If you want to send me some money, I'll totally take it. Any rate, though, all right, let's get rolling. I think we're gonna get started with our. I think we're gonna start with our Black Site story tonight. We'll start out with the Black Site story. Then we'll probably move into our Stragview story. Then we'll do our Kashmir story, and then we'll do our short stories. So that should be fun. Alrighty. Hello, wife.
I'm not naked, but I'm in a suit.
That's fine.
I don't care if they see my legs.
They can hear you.
Hi, people. You want to row?
You're fine.
I'm gonna look like a granny running out the door. Run, granny, run!
Sure to close the door behind you. There we go. Neat. Yep, that was my wife and my sister-in-law. My niece may come by here in a minute. I don't know. But, any rate, let's get rolling, I suppose. We'll start out with our Black Site story. We are on Chapter 4, Part 5, Plans Within Plans. So I do hope you guys like it. Let me make this a little smaller so that I can keep an eye on chat, just in case our mic quality starts to deteriorate a little. Alrighty. You wanted to see me, sir? Security Chief Ridley didn't look away from the monitors as he called Cutter in. He was watching 4 of the kiddos, 1 red band and 3 green bands, and Cutter was uncomfortable as he noticed that one of them was Dex. The kid had been a little lacking in class today, but that was understandable when you were the odd man out. Cutter doubted that that's what Ridley wanted to talk about, however, and it took the security chief a few minutes to answer him as he watched the 4 in the media room. These 4 are up to something. Cutter waited for him to elaborate, and when he didn't, Cutter decided to bite. Whatever do you mean, sir? I mean that they've been seen in the restroom the other night. And by the way, the little girl, the blue band prodigy, stormed out. I'd guess it didn't go well. Any idea what they were meeting about? The older girl, Cutter thought, was named Rebecca, and she was old enough to have more than schoolwork on her mind. But the kid that he and Gladdy had gone to get, the brat with the I'm better than you look, wasn't long out of diapers. Girls usually met boys in the bathroom for liaisons that had nothing to do with French homework. But if Masha had tagged along for that, then she was more advanced than he thought. Ridley gave him a sour look. Get your mind out of the gutter, Cutter. I don't think the girl was interested in a menage a trois. They know the bathroom is one of the few places we don't have cameras, so it would make an excellent place for secret meetings. Why don't we? Cutter asked. And when Ridley gave him a questioning look, he added, have cameras in the bathrooms, I mean. Suppose some kid decides to go hang himself in a stall. It might be nice to stop him. Decorum, mostly. It's considered bad manners to spy on people in the bathroom. Since when have you been worried about manners? Cutter asked with a grin. Ridley snorted and hit a button on the remote. He pulled up video of the restroom in question, and Cutter could see all 5 of them hanging out by the sinks and talking. He supposed they had been a little young for hanky-panky, but they didn't even appear to be getting drunk or having a smoke, activities young Cutter was usually more familiar with when in the bathroom at that age. These in the staff bathrooms, too? Cutter asked. Ridley didn't respond. There's no sound, he said, as Cutter looked at their silent lips questioningly. The techs thought that might be enough decorum, I suppose. Hang on a second. There's no sound, he said. There's no sound, he said, as Cutter looked at their silent lips questioningly. The techs thought that might be enough decorum, I suppose. I've never been much for lip reading, but it looks like a powwow of some sort or another. For what, though? Cutter asked, leaning forward to try and make sense of it. Actually, Blondie, that is a visiting dog named Hazel. She's rather opinionated about things. I've never actually heard Milkshake bark. I don't think she does it. She's very quiet and very well behaved. That is what I'd like to know. Keep an eye on them, especially the big boy, Dexter. You two have gotten quite chummy as of late, and he might let something slip if we're lucky. I doubt it, Cutter said, shaking his head as his eyes started to hurt. The kid plays it close to the vest. Probably had to after living on the street for so long. Will he graduate? Cutter shook his head. Pure washout, but he'll likely sign on if we ask. He's old enough that we could send him to training for a year or so, and he'd make a good snatcher. 16 or 17-year-olds usually put kids at ease before we snap them up. It's a good cover. Ridley was nodding, and the smile that stretched his face was downright predatory. See if he can be enticed. Maybe we can flip him. It's probably just kids playing games, but I don't like the look on this one's face, he said, pointing to Dunstan. Kid looks like he's been in the trenches, Cutter said, grinning a little. He's seen something, and if he's telling them about it, then it could be bad enough to make them try to escape or start a coup. That many kids with powers turning against us could be bad for business, and the scared kid is on our graduation list, if Hammershoal is to be believed. Cutter snorted. If it's the one who keeps finding people, then he's probably right. That kid has some chops. I want those chops, and I want them graduated. Whatever this is, I want it squashed. Understood? Crystal, boss, Cutter said with a jackleg salute before heading for the door. And Cutter, Ridley said, bringing the man up short, I trust you'll keep this knowledge about the cameras to yourself. What cameras? Cutter asked, before heading out into the site again. If there was one thing that Cutter was good at, it was keeping his mouth shut. Hey, Cindy, we're glad you could make it. Oh, it's been a night. I checked the doors, and everything seems to be locked up tight in the places we aren't supposed to be. They'd all decided to meet in the media room. Dex, Rebecca, Dunstan, and Gerald. Masha was still giving them the silent treatment, but Dexter was used to that after this morning's class. The Red Band group had never been what you would call friendly, but Dexter had usually been able to talk to Ryan, and that made it okay. Now, Ryan was part of Dick's little gang, and they did everything together, while Dex did most everything by himself. If Cutter had noticed, then he didn't make any comment on it. Cutter was a teacher, after all, and it probably wasn't his place to comment on the actions of students, as long as they weren't killing each other. Not like he could do anything if we did decide to kill each other, Dex thought. If Dick and his little gang decided they wanted to jump Dex, there wouldn't be a damn thing the burly ex-Navy man could do about it. He wasn't supposed to know that Cutter had been in the service, but when his uniform had hiked up a little higher than usual, and Dex had seen the Semper Fi tattoo across his ribs, he had kept it to himself. He would file that away for later consumption, because you just never knew what you might need to know around here. It's the same with the door near the Blue Band class, Dunstan said. They're all locked, or they've got those keycard readers that all the teachers seem to use. I haven't seen any weird strings either, Gerald informed them. Well, no weirder than usual. No weirder than usual. Hey, Paige. We're glad to see you. Gerald only really looked for blue and red strings, and lately they had been everywhere. The red strings hung around like bad omens, and they seemed to run under most of the doors. The blue strings ran... Thank you. I feel a little better. The blue strings ran pretty consistently, but the damnedest thing was that the blue and the red string that ran under the door where he would... Hang on. The blue strings ran pretty consistently, but the damnedest thing was that a blue and a red string ran under the door that he would go through if he was unlucky enough to graduate. Dunstan had told them what was on the other side, and Gerald just couldn't understand why a blue string would be present there. Maybe it was to show him that all he had to look forward to was death, but didn't everyone? Death was just something that happened, and it was something that you better get right with if you wanted to keep your mind intact. Well, I'm not sure how else we would manage it. That's a different voice. Very true, Blondie, very true. Well, I'm not sure how else we would manage it. We have a ragtag collection of powers, and I'm not sure any of them would be particularly suited to escape, Rebecca said as she put her chin in both her hands. For someone who had decided the need to... Try that again. For someone who had devised the need to escape, Rebecca had become very moody with the prospect of it. It seemed like, since she couldn't come up with a way to get out, then one must not exist. It was strange to see her so downtrodden, and none of them seemed to like it as they tried to devise the best way to get out of here. I suppose we could just bomb our exams, Dunstan said hopefully. Rebecca gave him a hard look before asking, Are you in that big a hurry to lose your gifts? Besides, who's to say that you get to go back to the real world if you wash out? I don't see a lot of these guys going back to the real world to live a normal and fulfilled life. Most of them seem to wind up back here again. Look. Which one of these is it? Okay. Look, I don't know about you, but my gift hasn't exactly been a picnic. I would honestly kind of like not being able to see things every time I pick up a fork or a pen. It's kind of a pain in the ass when you get right down to it. I don't know, Gerald piped up. Now that I know the strings exist, I think if I couldn't see them, it'd drive me crazy. I don't know, Dex said. I think if I lost my ability to push things, I might be a little better suited for the real world anyway. Doesn't really matter what exactly is waiting for us out there. You think they're going to print us out a high school diploma when they ship us out? Do you think they're going to give us a new social security card or a new bank account? As far as the real world is concerned, we're probably already dead. I know nobody was looking for me. And Dunstan, you're in the system, so I doubt anybody's looking for you too hard after the first couple of months. You two have families, but Gerald, you've been pretty clear on the fact that your home life is anything but stable. For once, Gerald didn't have anything to say about that. It gets echoey if I got open doors. Let's face it, if we get out of here, it's just to disappear until somebody finds us. Nothing is waiting for us out there, and we might as well wrap our heads around that. They were silent for a minute after that revelation, and when Rebecca spoke, it made Dex jump. Honestly, it's the principle of the thing. These wackos think they can just abduct us and take our powers and then push us out of the nest again? I don't think so. She probably meant it to sound tough or invigorating, but it really just sounded like a scared little girl playing make-believe to the rest of them. So, if we can't get through the door, then what are our options? Seems as if there's only two, Rebecca said. Since we can't get out on our own, we're going to need help. That means we either have to get a message to somebody on the outside, or we have to get somebody in here to help us. Good plan, Dexter said. Except, how are we going to get a message to the outside if we can't get out? I've been thinking about that, Rebecca said, as she picked up her end with a little more confidence. They have computers in the media room. I know there are games on them. Some of them are even online games. I've seen some of the other kids checking out their social media, too. Maybe there's a way that we can get a message out of here to somebody else. I'm sure that they have that end buttoned up nicely, Gerald said. You can't expect a government facility like this not to be monitoring our outgoing and incoming messages. If those kids are checking their emails, then I guarantee they're not talking to anybody. They're just checking pre-existing sites. I watched a couple of YouTube videos the other night, and I noticed that the comment section was turned off on both of them. These are channels that I've watched for years, people who are relying on comments for interaction, and there's no way they're going to turn off their comment section on a video with over 1 million views. That tells me that whatever's going on here, they have at least that much control. Rebecca rolled her eyes. You guys are thinking too linearly. There's a collection of weird powers around here. Are you going to tell me that somebody can't mess with electrical signals? There has to be one person around here who can maybe somehow alter the passage of subtitles or maybe find a workaround for the firewall that blocks our emails. We just have to find them. As to your point, Dex put in as he rode her over, what adult that works for the kindergarten is going to help us? Seems like most of them have drank the Kool-Aid for so long that they don't piss without filing reports. Dunstan had been silent since Rebecca put the idea forward, but he looked up now and said, there might be one. All of them turned to look at him questioningly. Sorry. All of them turned to look at him, questions bleeding through their stares. Which one? I know you aren't thinking about talking to Dr. Hammershoal. The doc's all right. Oh, wait. Wrong one. I gotta start mapping these voices a little. Which one? I know you're not talking about going to Dr. Hammershoal. The doc's all right most of the time, but he's deep in the black site's pocket when it's all said and done. He may want to help us, but he doesn't want to get burned himself to do it. Not the little doctor, somebody else. I think she might help us if I asked her. I get the feeling that she really wants to make amends, and I think we can trick her into helping us get out. Who are you talking about? Rebecca asked. Dunstan sighed. My mother. All right, that's our black site story for the week. Let's pull up another one here. Oh, things are getting pretty juicy over at the old black site, it looks like. So let's see. I think maybe next we'll read our Stragview story. And then we'll go to our Kashmir story, and then we'll read our short stories. Alrighty, so this one's going to pick up with a new year at Stragview after we've had our battle for Stragview and our other hijinks. So this one's literally called New Year at Stragview. So remember Blondie? It was in the earlier ones. It's been a minute since we've done black site stuff. So like, well, the early black site stuff. So she I don't know. It's been he found her in his chapter during the first part, and then it's like hinted at it a few times. But like, yeah, one of his mother's one of the Snatchers. Anyway, we're gonna do our Stragview story, New Year at Stragview, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You seem in good spirits today, sir. The warden and A.W. Strauss were walking across the compound, and Strauss was correct. The warden was in rare form, really feeling his roots today, and it was the finest day he had had in quite some time. The prison had rang in the new year without having anything too terrible happen. There had been a couple of fights, a couple of call-ins, but nothing terrible enough to call in help. Everything had proceeded as it should, and the warden was pretty happy with how the prison was running. I feel as if a new year calls for a new outlook, my dear Mr. Strauss. We need to look at this as a chance to improve upon what we've already done, and perhaps look to the future for what we can now do. Wouldn't you say? I would, Strauss said, as they walked through the gates and began ascending the steps into the tower, which is why I want to speak with you about some items of interest. What sort of items? The warden asked, assuming Strauss was about to blunder into another tangent on the day-to-day operations of the prison. Just some items we need to address before we can truly be back on track. The warden took a seat behind his desk, folding his hands behind his head and gazing at his bookshelf in admiration. All of his trophies were accounted for, all of his winnings were still in place, and he rather felt like one of those dragons from the storybook as he sat amongst his treasures. The tower was magnificent, the true seat of his power, and he was glad that he had not torn it down when so many of Strauss's predecessors had tried to talk him into it. So, what's on the docket for the new year? Well, Strauss began, let's begin with the most obvious matter. You have to make good on what you promised the staff when they came back. The warden nodded. He hadn't forgotten. When his officers came back after the Ghoul Squad had been such a complete failure, he had promised them certain amendments to their existing contract. Pay raises, changes to the food in the staff cafeteria, a better hiring policy for new officers, more time off, the usual things they wanted. The warden had been so overjoyed that so many of them had come back to help him that he had agreed without much argument, and now it was time to make good on those promises. Very well, you can tell them that they can have their increase in pay, and I will personally make sure that the menu in the staff cafeteria changes. Very good. And the changes to uniform policy? The warden almost laughed. Some of these concerns were all but trivial to him. By all means, if they want to wear polo shirts as opposed to whatever it is that they're wearing now, then so be it. I will approve the extra $150 thrice yearly to their uniform allowance as well. Most generous, Strauss said as he made a note. Next order of business is the death house. The warden felt his blood run a little cold. Is there something wrong with the containment around the death house? No, Strauss said, but he realized why such a statement might make the warden a little jumpy. But we also cannot use it as it means... excuse me. As a means of executing inmates, which is a problem because we have several that are awaiting execution, though a date has yet been set. The warden shrugged. We can burn that bridge when we get to it. There's usually time between arrival and execution. Most of these men want to work their cases and see if they can get a little reprieve before their meeting with the hereafter arrives. That's true, but a few of our charges have been here for nearly a year. They've exhausted most of their appeals, and they're going to come a letter to your desk within a few months discussing dates for execution. It would be a shame if we had to tell the state capitol that we can't execute inmates anymore, and they need to start giving some of that extra money that we get every year to another prison. Point well taken, the warden said. It seems we need some more options. Indeed, especially since part of your arrangement with the garden is that we won't use their facilities anymore. I don't want to know how they executed inmates and how it was being done, especially since I'd have to testify against you if it went to court. But it seems we need a new place to do the deed, as it were. Don't worry, I've been looking into that. With Reese gone, we might be able to strike a truce with the hellhounds that live in the woods again. I've been neglecting them over the years, and I'm a big enough man to admit that it might be time to offer an olive branch. Other than that, we have other options. Let's look into that before we panic. As little as I want to, it might be time to build a new death house. A new death house? And where would we put it? We put it opposite our existing one, of course. We would put it in the lot on the other side of confinement. There's enough space, and we really haven't been utilizing the property for quite some time. It could be beneficial to begin construction within the next few weeks, especially if time is becoming short for some of our charges. Strauss made some notes, nodding and writing in the margins before moving to the next point of order. We have been having some issues with spirits inside the prison. The warden spread his hands. What else is new? This is a little different than the ghost story. Blech. This is a little different than the usual ghost stories. Some of the spirits that were under the control of the late Miss Evergreen have begun popping up randomly. A few of the inmates have also begun to report seeing shadows with smiling faces. He gave the warden an arch look, but the old devil understood what he was driving at. The containment around the death house is fine. There's no way that any of the laughing shadows have made their way out of it. If the inmates are spreading tales, then they might need to be reminded that falsifying reports is something that gets you sent to confinement for quite some time. Well, that's certainly going to provide a dip in altruism. It's something we might need to look into, however. We can always speak to the man who came to help us during the battle. What was his name? Jonathan? The young man who works at the hospital. Yes, we might be able to talk to the old man and his grandson as well. They have some experience with spirits, and they could be... The radio suddenly crackled, and an officer came over to tell them that there was trouble in E-Dorm. I need medical and extra hands to E-Dorm. I have a problem. Bleh. Train of thought. I need medical and extra hands to Edorm. I have a possible medical issue with an inmate who is having a violent episode. There were several confirmations over the radio, and then one of the nurses popped on to ask who it was. Inmate Crowley appears to be having a schizophrenic episode. I need some hands sooner rather than later. It's not a situation I can control on my own. Strauss and the warden looked at each other before both turned and headed towards Edorm. The warden had been trying to help a little more after the show of support from his officers. He wanted them to know that he was there and that he cared, and he also wanted to head off another such walkout if it was brewing. When they knew that their boss was there for them, officers tended to be in better spirits. Those were the only sorts of spirits the warden wanted to see in Stragview these days. Edorm was where his sister had been putting the rehabilitated inmates from the underprison, and it had been a rousing success, other than a few incidents. Those who lived in the dorm seemed to be plagued with nightmares, and more than a few of them had been put on medication to treat side effects from their time underground and his sister's healing therapy. His sister had made them forget, and that left holes in their memories, as well as in their mind. Ugh. Alrighty. Some of them remembered later that they had had powers that his brother had taken away from them. His sister and his brother were working with them still, but it was definitely a work in progress. The warden and his assistant came in behind a crowd of yard officers, and he arrived in time to watch them put cuffs on inmate Crowley as he was unceremoniously pushed to the ground. The man was raving, spit flying from his lips as he yelled about shadows and being watched. The warden approached the sergeant who had made the call, Sergeant Gleason, in fact, and the sergeant started to tell him that he had everything under control and that he could go back to his dorm, before he realized he was talking to the boss and smartened up a little bit. Sorry, Warden, I didn't know it was you. We have the situation under control. It's just Crowley. He does this pretty regularly. What is he claiming to have seen exactly? The warden asked, trying not to show too much interest, but wanting to make sure. It's nothing. He says he sees smiling shadows. He says he's being watched or stalked by these weird creatures that seem to pop out of nowhere. The man's not right in the head. He's on enough antipsychotics to choke a horse. I wouldn't take it too seriously. The warden looked back at Strauss, and the man tried his best not to look as if he was about to say, "I told you so." It seems the ghost problem is going to be as big an issue as the death house problem, and both of them would need to be solved sooner rather than later. I suppose we might make those phone calls a priority, the warden said, as he and Strauss made their way back to the tower. Looks like, Strauss said, it's a problem. We certainly need... We certainly wouldn't want it to get out of hand. The warden shook his head. It seemed that there was always something going on at Stragview. All right. Stragview story's done, so. Amen, Blondie. Alrighty. Let's get our... Let's get our... What are you guys having a fit about? I swear. Cheap, 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 cheap. Ba, 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 ba. Okay. What? Okay, it's got to be in the thing, then. Hang on. I got to find this story. hell? Did I put it somewhere else? Stand by, guys. I'm trying to find the story. Where is my story? Damn it. What the hell? Okay, there it is. I found it. Give me 2 minutes, guys. Let me go get some water. I will be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to go get some water. Oh, I don't know. I like the audience that I have. You guys are plenty big enough for me.
What?
On live?
Still?
Yeah, I've only done 2 stories.
You just let me talk all that shit about the dog?
No, the mic was muted.
Oh.
Never a dull moment around here. let's get back to it. So, now that I have found it, I'm going to read our Kashmir story, where we're going to check up on Brandon, our food delivery guy that we talked about a couple of stories ago. And as I do, I'm going to sprinkle some more breadcrumbs. So, this one doesn't have a title yet, so we'll figure something out. Anyway, this is about Brandon and his bike meals service, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Brandon checked the order on his phone as he cross-checked it against the receipt. 4 soft tacos, 4 crunchy tacos, a Mexican pizza, 4 sopapillas, and a burrito supreme. Yeah, looks like you're missing 2 orders of sopapillas. There's only 2 here. The kid behind the counter didn't look much older than Brandon, but the ash hanging from the end of his cigarette made him look years older. The coal was still winking, the ash threatening to constantly tip off into the glass he was drinking from, and as he read over the slip again, his mouth creased down in a frown of concentration. "The recipe says 2 orders," he drawled, after puzzling over it for a count of 30. "The online order says 4. See?" Brandon said, as he held out his phone so they could have a look. The kid squinted, looked from the receipt to the phone, and finally shrugged as he reached into the kitchen and pulled out 2 more bags. He added them to the brown sack, resealing it with a colorful sticker and handing it to Brandon. "My mistake. Happy hunting, kid." Brandon took the bag and headed for his bike. Rodrigo's was always like this. The staff seemed to be constantly trying to pull a fast one, and that's why Brandon and the others who worked for bike meals had to check the orders so closely. That would have been the 3rd time this month that Rodrigo's had screwed him over, and when the orders weren't right, you didn't get paid. Brandon needed that money. He needed to buy the last of the supplies because things in his dreams had changed for the worse. The dreams from the Whispering God had always been strange, but at least they had been familiar. He'd had the dreams for as long as he could remember. Hold on a second, guys. Give me 2 shakes. Never mind. Trying to get people to walk between the bedroom and the living room, but not quite yet. All right, hang on. Alrighty, where were we? He'd had the dreams for as long as he could remember. All his life, he supposed, but they had never been this bad. Brandon still called him the Whispering God, but lately he'd done anything but whisper. Before, it had spoken quiet words to Brandon, enticing him, calling to him, but now those words had devolved into the thick, guttural screams of the damned. It had once rained the whispers on him, and those whispers had sustained him, but now the rain felt like hail, and the dreams could not so easily be escaped. Once, Brandon cursed the insomnia that followed those dreams, but now he could only think back on it fondly. Whatever this was, it would scream at him for hours, berating him for not summoning it to this plane of being. It was cold. It was cold, It was tired, and it was... Can't talk tonight. It was cold, it was tired, and it was hungry. Brandon needed to bring the Whispering God through, and soon. Otherwise, he might not be sane enough to do it. Brandon... Brains all over the place tonight. Casey had been helping a lot, but he was no Merlin. Brandon had the candles, all of them, which had... made...
Alright, I'm ready.
4A. No, weird word. Which had made for a closet full of expensive-ass candles. The chalk, which he'd gotten all the way from some monastery in East Asia. The red brick clay from a quarry out west that had also not been cheap. And, finally, the gravestone ash from the crematorium at Thurman Brothers. Now, all he needed was the complete hawk skeleton and some... and something that might have been a little harder to find. Casey had been helping him track down a book that he would need to summon the creature, but it wasn't something you could pick up at Barnes & Noble. This was an old book, one of those that might have survived fires in Alexandria or the collapse of Babel. It was old knowledge, and old knowledge was costly. Casey had been talking with someone about getting the pages that he needed, a translation or a rubbing, so he didn't have to buy the whole book. But even that was proving out of Brandon's price range. Brandon had picked up a few more jobs, working at the gas station or doing odd jobs for Kashmir Sundries when the proprietor needed something heavy moved. It didn't leave him a lot of time to sleep, but that wasn't as big a problem these days. Please, chill out. Brandon liked working for bike meals, and he didn't want to leave them suddenly high and dry. He was on his way out of town, delivering to one of the farms on the outskirts of Kashmir, when he encountered something strange. That doesn't mean much in a town like Kashmir. Most everything here is strange, but what he found was stranger than most. Parked on the side of the road, looking for all the world like some kind of carnival van, was a wooden caravan with sunbursts painted on the side of it. There were traces for horses to be connected, but Brandon didn't see any horses. There was a woman sitting on the steps of the caravan, her homespun dress looking very plain as she sat with her head in her hands. She was trying to look sad, but Brandon was pretty sure it was an act. She looked up hopefully when she saw him coming by and called out for him to help as his eyes lingered on the caravan a little too long. Young man, will you help me? My horses seem to have gotten away from me, and I can't seem to find them. No one seems to come this way, and I doubt anyone will help. I doubt any help will be arriving anytime soon either. Can you track them down for me? I need to make it into town before nightfall. Brandon wanted to tell her to figure it out or maybe pick up her cell phone and call for some help, but there was something about the young woman that made him want to help her. Brandon had never been the most altruistic of people. He was probably more likely to help himself than to help others, but he decided to stand the bike against the nearest tree and attempt to help her before he was really sure what he was doing. Just for a minute, he said, as his common sense attempted to reassert control. I'm out making a delivery, and I have to get there by a certain time. The woman nodded happily. Of course, of course. Thank you for helping me. Seems like I've had the worst luck here in Kashmir. They broke their supports as we crossed the border there. They should be fairly close. They're well-trained horses. The two of them stumbled into the woods as they began looking for signs of the missing horses. Brandon didn't see any broken branches or torn up earth to indicate that a couple of horses that were big enough to pull the caravan had made it into the woods. He didn't know much about horses, but he knew they were big, and when they weren't smashing through the woods, you usually saw some sign of their passing. It all seemed a little fishy to him, but he also wanted to help the woman. He still couldn't have said why, but he felt strongly moved to help her any way he could. I wonder, could I talk to you about something while we look? I suppose so, Brandon said, as he got down and tried to find hoof prints or something to let him know what direction to look. Have you ever heard of the Bright? Brandon had been prepared to tell her that he had never heard of anything like that, but suddenly there was a sharp pain that went through his skull like a lightning bolt. It was as if a sudden and direct beam of plasma had gone through his gray matter and out the other side. He felt heat and smelled smoke, and when he staggered and fell to the leaves that lay wet and decomposing under the trees, he heard the woman continue to tell him about whatever religion she had come to speak on. Brandon could not have told you how long he lay there and listened. It might have been seconds, or it might have been days, but as she told him about the mercy and the joy of the Bright, Brandon was suddenly aware that he could not remember the dreams. He could not hear the sudden and inescapable whispers that he sometimes heard during the day. He couldn't remember the terrible screams that creature had rained down on him when he could not summon it to this plane of existence. It was as if whatever the Bright was expunged that knowledge from his head, and he was thankful and terrified in equal measure. When he finally rose from the leaves, he felt like he'd been reborn, and when he touched his head, expecting to find blood, there was nothing but the wet remains of leaves and the sudden and inescapable joy of no longer being tethered to that screaming, whispering entity. He staggered as he tried to reassert himself. No. He staggered as it tried to reassert itself, the screaming and tearing coming back like a rat trapped inside a bag. But then a roaring brightness rose and put it down again, and it went scurrying back to whatever dark hole it now resided within. "Are you okay?" she asked, as Brandon got back to his feet. "Yeah," he said, liking the way the word tasted in his mouth. "Yeah, I feel amazing. How? How did you do that?" The woman smiled, and her smile was far toothier than he had expected. All things are possible through the Bright. Brandon felt a few minutes late. Brandon left a few minutes later, a brochure in his pocket and the tacos getting cold in his bike basket. He would drop them off, and then he would head back to town. He wanted to read the pamphlet that the woman had given him and think over what she had said. Mostly, he just wanted to sleep without the whispering God trying to tell him how much of a failure he was. It seemed he might have discovered something new and wonderful out in the woods, and eventually, he might tell everyone all about it. There you go. That is our Kashmir story this week. Alrighty. 3 stories down and 2 to go. So we're going to move on to our Tuesday, Thursday short stories. This first one is about some weird posters that appear in a small town. It's called Found, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I live in what would probably be considered a mid-sized town. If that doesn't make sense, we're bigger than a small town, but we're not quite a metropolis. There are probably about 500,000 people who call the city home, with about another 100,000 that live on the outskirts and would consider the town to be their place of residence if you ask them. It's the kind of thing people say. You ask them where they're from and they tell you, "Oh, I'm from Atlanta," but what they really mean is they live about 5 miles out of town. Or they say, "I'm from Cincinnati," but what they mean is they live on a farm 30 minutes out because they like to feel rural while still having access to a big city. Our town isn't huge, but we have enough people to run the essentials, and that's pretty okay. I give you this setup so that you know that seeing lost posters around town isn't unheard of. People lose things. It's a way of life. People lose dogs. They lose wallets. Sometimes they lose spouses. And of course, some people get abducted, and someone is usually looking for those people. I travel a lot for my job. Yeah, if I could talk today. I travel a lot for my job. I'm one of a legion of DoorDash drivers and Uber drivers and whatever else that you can use to make money. Hang on. Try that again. I travel a lot for my job. I'm one of a legion of driver. Just do it again. I travel a lot for my job. I'm one of a legion of drivers for Uber and DoorDash and whatever else I can make a buck at. I pretty much drive all over town and out of it, so I have a lot of time to sit around and look at these kinds of things. The posters are usually on a lamppost or a window or taped to a wall somewhere. They're right next to somebody else trying to sell you guitar lessons or ads for a concert or a new shop in town. They're not uncommon, as I've said, and I always think it's kind of neat when you come back a week later and it's gone. Maybe I'm naive, but in my mind, I like to think that means whoever has lost something has actually found it. I'm sure the sign just fell off or got soaked in the rain, but hey, I'm an optimist, and thinking that way makes me feel good. Give me just a second. So when I pulled up outside of Valero's Pizza to grab a couple of large pies and a soda for some yahoo about 5 miles out of town, I did a double take when I saw the sign. It wasn't a lost poster. It was the opposite, actually. Found. Cocker Spaniel. Dog tags say Lola. Phone number attached goes nowhere. If you are missing Lola, then call the number below for information. I thought maybe it was a setup for some kind of private eye or something, but there was nothing else on the poster. There was a number at the bottom, but that was about it. I remember thinking about it as I drove to the drop-off point. It was nice to see somebody trying to set things right around here. More power to whoever was trying to find lost things, and I could certainly respect them for that. That was the first time I saw one of the signs, but it certainly wasn't the last. I see what you did there. A couple of days later, as I was pulling into McDonald's, I saw another found poster, and I felt the corner of my mouth pull up in a smile. I'd hoped it wouldn't just be a fluke. I really wanted to believe that someone was out there trying to get people back what they had lost. Maybe that's the optimist in me again, but that's the way I like to look at it. This one looked a little newer. Maybe it had only been there for a couple of days, but it was exactly the same as the last one, except they hadn't found Lola this time. Found. Blue high school letterman jacket. Owner goes to East Side Preparatory School. There is a football patch on, if I could read. There is a football patch and a basketball patch on the back for this. There is a football patch and a basketball patch on the back for the current year. Name on the back is Bryce. If you are missing this jacket, call the number attached. Right on. Somebody had lost a Letterman jacket and would probably want it back. Those things were expensive. Way too expensive to give to kids who seem to lose damn near everything. I really hoped they saw the flyer because I knew I would want my Letterman jacket back if it had gone missing, even though the damn thing doesn't fit anymore. Cool. Over the next few weeks, I seemed to see the posters everywhere. Someone had found car keys. Someone had found another dog. Someone had found a license plate. They were hoping to reunite with a car. Someone had found a set of apartment keys. Someone had found a backpack. And on and on and on. Pretty soon, I stopped seeing missing posters, and I started seeing more found posters than anything. The same phone number invited people to call and find out what exactly had been lost and how they could pick it up. It was kind of neat, until it got a little weird. It was about 2 months... Mouth doesn't want to work. It was about 2 months after I'd seen the first poster, and I was pulling up in front of Texas Roadhouse to pick up an order. I saw one of the found posters on their bulletin board, the white paper looking strange as it sat between two announcements for country western bands. I glanced at it, meaning to walk on by, but then I stopped and went back, not sure that I had really seen what I had seen. On the poster, there was the face of a scared-looking girl. She couldn't have been more than about 8 or 9, dressed for school in some kind of uniform, and as she looked up at whatever was taking the picture, I got the feeling that she wasn't really okay with being there. She had that look that just screamed that she was being held against her will, and that was when I read the squib underneath it. Found. One girl in school uniform. Found wandering aimlessly by Brooklyn and South Avenue. Girl does not know her home address. Girl does not know her parents' phone number. Girl says her cell phone and money were taken by a mugger. Girl wants to be returned to her home. If you know this girl, please call the number below. I read it over a couple of times. This didn't seem like the sort of thing that should be done by a sign on a bulletin board. A case like this was solidly in the scope of the police or maybe a private detective. Where was the girl being held until they found her parents? Was she being fed? What was being done about her care? I didn't know, but I remember that it made me feel a little weird. It made me feel like maybe whoever was operating this service was not on the up and up, as I had thought. Maybe whoever was